welcome to the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and today on the show, I interview author and translator Jeva Singh-Anand. Jeva's most recent work involves the translation from German to English of the original Bavarian Illuminati's secret rites and rituals called The Secret School of Wisdom, the authentic rituals and doctrines of the Illuminati. These are the very rituals that went on to become a large part of modern-day Freemasonry. The facts are that there are many shills and opportunists out there who are cashing in big time on this 200-year-old conspiracy, and they're making their living off of Illuminati lies. Fortunately, there are people such as Jeva and his business associates that are bringing factual evidence and true history to the Illuminati table with this great book. It has been said that this is the first book to ever go over the true teachings of the original Illuminati and contain factual evidence taken from their actual writings. It marks the first time that a comprehensive ritual book of the society has ever been reassembled. Every degree, its instruction, and associated texts has been included and assembled in chronological order of progression. This is really an awesome Illuminati-packed podcast. Jeva tells us a lot about the truth of what happened in Germany and how these teachings were perpetuated with the Order of the Illuminati. But before we get into this great show, I have a quick announcement. First of all, thank you to all the Gnostic Warriors and people around the world who have been tuning in and downloading the Gnostic Warrior podcast. Over 20,000 people this past month. It is just incredible the amount of feedback and the people that have been liking the Gnostic Warrior community Facebook page as well. I appreciate it. I'm going to do my best job to give you guys alternative media and get the best speakers and authors to interview. Second, if any of you would like to join a new exciting order, an order of the Gnostics that's going to be open to men and women, people of all beliefs, faiths, and religion around the world, I would love to hear from you. Please go to GnosticWarrior.com, click the contact button, and shoot me an email, and I'll send you a reply and give you some more information on this exciting new order. We're going to have a private website with learning, special events, videos, and fellowship with people around the world that want to spread truth, love, and light with no egos. So if you'd like to get involved, please go to GnosticWarrior.com. Also, if there's any people out there that can donate to the Gnostic Warrior cause, I really appreciate it. To keep these shows going, it does cost some money for the production, the servers, and all that stuff. So I'd really appreciate it. A quick donation, you can go to GnosticWarrior.com as well. And now it's time for the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast.
Hi.
Hey, it was good morning or good afternoon?
Good morning. We're actually both on Pacific time.
Okay, where are you located?
Right now I'm in Astoria, Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, where they shot the Goonies.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it's beautiful up there, huh?
It really is. It really is. The whole town is built on this hill right at the right by the on the Columbia River.
Okay.
And it's absolutely gorgeous.
Awesome. How long have you been up there in Oregon, Jeva? Is it Jeva or Jeva?
It's Jeva.
Okay, Jeva. How long you been up there in Oregon?
I want to say about 2.5 years. I moved there from Sioux City, Iowa, to be with the love of my life.
She was in Oregon and you were in Iowa?
Exactly. She was in Beaverton, and then her job moved her to the North Coast. So here we are.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down in Southern California in San Diego County. I'm in a place called Julian now, up in the mountains, and real beautiful up here. So I appreciate you agreeing to come on the show today to be interviewed. Yeah,
not a problem, and it's an honor.
Great. And I'm just going to start the show a little bit different than I normally do. I'll just start it now. And, I want to educate the audience a little bit about who you are before we get into the great work you're doing now and, of course, the book that you have been involved in. So can you explain to the audience a little bit about who you are and your background?
Sure. My name is Jeva Singh-Anand, and I've been working as a freelance translator and copywriter for about 5 years now. Before that, I was in education. I was an English and art teacher for about 12 years, and then in 2005, I left teaching to try my hand at freelancing. It took about 10 years to get to the point where I could basically quit my other day job and freelance on a full-time basis. I got involved with doing translation work of Illuminati documents in at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012. And the first book I translated was one of Adam Weishaupt, who was the founder of the Illuminati. One of his apologetic writings called A Brief Justification of My Intentions. I translated that for a client, and I don't know if they ever did anything with it, but last year another translation of the same work by Dr. Tony Page was published, and it's actually pretty good. And then my next book that I translated was Philo's reply to questions concerning his association with the Illuminati. I was actually in the process of working on a different book because I felt that there still weren't enough histories on that order that were in publication. So I decided to work on Leopold Engel's history of the Illuminati order. And I was probably about maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the project when I was contacted by Joseph Vages, and he convinced me to skip that project for a while and work on the secret school instead.
Gotcha. And prior to this, so around 4 years ago, you had started transcribing Illuminati from German to English. Prior to that, were you involved in any type of esoteric occult translations, or was it mainly just freelancing German to English? Whoever would hire you, you would work for if you guys agreed upon the fee and so forth?
Exactly, yes. I was a freelancer, and as a freelancer, you basically, if somebody says, hey, can you translate this commercial lease or this contract or this technical manual, that's basically what you do. So I kind of stumbled onto the Illuminati documents. It was a happy accident, actually.
Yeah, interesting. And were you aware of the Illuminati prior to this?
Absolutely, yes. I was actually married to a person who was very much into that, but more from a conspiratorial perspective. By nature, I've been a skeptic about a lot of things. I was kind of raised although I was never baptized as a Christian, but I was kind of raised in a Lutheran sort of agnostic type environment because I grew up in northern Germany.
Okay.
So Lutheranism is basically just a normal thing there. After a while, I kind of became skeptical about that, and then I started about 1985. I actually became a Wiccan.
Was this when you were in Germany or when you came to America?
That was about 2 years after I'd come to the States.
Okay.
Then I started to do research into, well, what are the roots of Wicca? Because with any kind of religion, you have the actual history and then you have the mythical history. And of course, the mythical history that Margaret Murray came up with, it's a beautiful myth. But when you check it against historic facts, it doesn't check out. And in 1990, when Aidan Kelly came out with this book, Crafting the Art of Magic Part 1, that pretty much put an end to that mythical history as actual history. So I started to dig further, and then I found that much of the source material was actually taken from Crowley's writing, Aleister Crowley's writing, and from actual O.T.O ritual. And Gardner actually was a member of the O.T.O. And after Crowley's death, there was talk about him possibly taking over the English branch of the O.T.O. So I started digging around there some more, and I ended up joining the O.T.O.
So Wicca, excuse me for a second. So Wicca was basically, there was the mythological creation that was perpetuated, in literary circles, and then there's the actual facts, which you have found to believe it's basically Aleister Crowley created religion that became the O.T.O. Am I correct to say that, or?
No,
Okay.
I know there's a lot of brothers and sisters in the O.T.O. who like to say that, and that is not true either.
Okay, all right.
Basically, it started out in 1939. It was one of the many Reconstructionist movements that were based on Murray's theories. And but if you look at what Murray wrote and compare that to actual Wiccan liturgy, even Gardner's Book of Shadows, which is actually available online for free even, it's not the same religion. He just kind of took the history and then he came up with something that matched his own beliefs, and he turned that into what we now know as Wicca. And of course, since Gardner's time, Wicca has become such a diverse creature that there are some branches of that religion that don't even have anything to do with what Gardner first started out with. But I think it is accurate to say that Wicca has taken a lot of, or adopted a lot of, the liturgies that are found in some of the O.T.O. rituals. I think that would be accurate. But no, it's not O.T.O. light or Thelema light, as some of my Thelemic friends like to say.
And you're still a member of the O.T.O.?
Yes.
Okay, and you're also, I heard in another interview, you're also a Freemason as well.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I am.
Great. I just wanted to disclose that to the audience. I've had a lot of Freemasons on here before, and then also members of the O.T.O., so I have no problem with that. I just, like the audience to know that. And what I would like to do, of course, I know the O.T.O. is going to come up a little bit later. That's more of the modern thing, and your work surrounds the Illuminati. And I want to read a quote here that I believe is good for the audience to hear. And this is written by Arturo. I don't know how you'd say his name. He's the Grand Cross Grand Archivist, historian.
Arturo de Hoyos?
Yeah, de Hoyos, 33rd degree,
Mm-hmm.
South jurisdiction of the USA. So basically, he is the main guy for the Scottish Rite Freemasons as far as Grand Archivist and historian. And this is what he had said about your book titled The Secret School of Wisdom, The Authentic Rituals and Doctrines of the Illuminati. And here is the quote from him. Although some of the rituals and documents have remained available in both libraries and digital archives, no English language work has succeeded in presenting the magnificent treasure trove of original material as successfully as the book you are now holding in your hands. It is the first work of its kind to offer for the first time the full and complete system of the Illuminati under a single cover. Using original source materials, it succeeds in presenting a coherent and intelligible resource to students of Masonic rituals, secret societies, enlightenment thinking, and little-known aspects of world history. You may now read and study the authentic secret rituals and lectures that have gave birth to the great conspiracies of today. As preparation of this book progressed, I was thrilled to receive each new section, which I hungrily consumed and compared with documents and manuscripts in my possession. I'm happy to report this book is everything I hoped it would be, and I am likewise happy to commend it to you. So that's a huge recommendation, and he's their main historian. I would say Arturo would be kind of similar to Albert Pike, because at one time, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, Albert Pike was that guy. Would it be safe to say that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Yes, I think he's a humble person, and I don't think he would go quite as far as comparing himself to Pike.
Yeah, he seems humble. He's not a guy to go out there and actually say much. Kind of nice to find this quote by him of your book. You don't see him make that many quotes of other people's work.
Yes, and I'm especially pleased that he used the word intelligible.
Exactly. For the audience out there that doesn't understand what this book is about and so forth, I know you were the main transcriptionist and there was other people that were involved in the book. Can you explain exactly, how you got involved and what it's about?
Basically, I got involved because I was contacted by Joseph Vegas. He had read my translation of Philo's Reply by Baron Adolf Knigge, who was kind of the person who, using his contacts and his very outgoing personality, managed to grow the Illuminati from something that was more like a college reading society, a student club that numbered maybe a couple of dozen members, to a network that expanded beyond the boundaries of the German states that was about maybe at its height 2,000 members strong. And he asked me if I was interested in translating the entire ritual of the Illuminati. I was actually involved in working on another book, but Joseph I think he could sell sand to people. He's that convincing. In retrospect, I think his instincts were right.
Gotcha. So you're glad that you changed course and went with his recommendation to do this book.
Yes.
Good. What would you say the main problem you had in transcribing and getting your hands on all these documents? Did Joseph have all these, or did you guys have to, you piecemealed it together? How did that all work?
The documents were compiled by Joseph Vegas and our project partner in Germany, Reinhard Markner.
Okay.
And both had studied and collected Illuminati documents for years. In fact, Markner is one of the top guys in that field in Germany.
Is he a Freemason as well?
No, he's not actually.
Okay.
He's a Masonic scholar, but he's not a Freemason.
Okay.
They actually were very accommodating in a lot of respects, because they would actually transcribe the documents from the scans and transcribe them to Microsoft Word format, and all I had to do was to sit down and translate, which translating 18th century German to the tune of about maybe 145,000 words, that was quite a project too.
I could imagine. And had the German language changed at all from the 18th century to now?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, just a couple of decades ago, they did something called a spelling reform, where they even changed the spelling of words that I'd grown up with back in grade school and so forth. But yes,
okay.
Language changes. It's just kind of like trying to read an English work that was written in the 18th century. So we could compare to that.
Sure. So where they helped you now, your partners in Germany was changing that translation to a more modern German translation, which of course was put into Word, and that made your job a lot easier. That was already hard as it was.
Well, the German vocabulary was still in the 18th century, and I actually did not have a problem with that per se, because I grew up in Germany. German is actually my native language. My grandmother was very good about making sure that I would read all these old texts, all these old German legends and so forth. And she had quite a few books in the old Fraktur print. And so I learned how to read that old script at an early age, and even some of the Fraktur cursive. There's a Fraktur cursive. And Fraktur is the typeface that was used prior to the end of World War II in German. And it looks similar to the Old English style, but it's not quite the same lettering.
Okay. In regards to the German society and culture, were the Illuminati known as well there as they are here in the United States, which we seem to love conspiracies? Was it the same in the German culture?
In the German culture, not so much, unless you were interested in the late Enlightenment in Bavaria, unless you were into conspiracy theories in German. In Switzerland, of course, it's a different story. In Switzerland, by and large, until very recently, they were actually looked upon as kind of a respectable organization. For example, Baron de Bassus, who was the printer of the organization, he had a print shop and printing material that they used to publish all the books that were written by members of the order. There's actually a memorial plaque in his birth house, and Pestalozzi was also a member that helped start the Swiss chapter of the Illuminati. Their only public relations concern was that after the order was exposed, that they might be associated with the Jesuit order. And of course, Switzerland is adamantly Calvinist. After the order was kind of renamed in Switzerland, it was, I think, renamed to something like the Society for the Promotion of the Public Good or something. They went ahead and started a couple of philanthropic projects. One of them was a school for disadvantaged children that lasted until the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century.
So it's interesting. They start out as a chapter of the Illuminati, and then as time goes by, they find some type of affiliation or a tie to the Catholic Jesuit order, which, them being Lutherans, they of course had a problem with, and then they basically changed the name of their order because of this. Is that what you had said basically in a nutshell?
Exactly. And the thing is, it was more a matter of public perception, because they were never friends with the Lutherans.
Okay.
Not with the Lutherans, I mean the Jesuits. But the public perception was that these guys were started by someone that was educated in the Jesuit system, and then toward the end of Knigge's stay in the order, Knigge and Weishaupt had a really bad falling out over ritual, and we can talk about that in a little bit.
Sure.
And Knigge basically sent a letter to all the higher members saying that, well, this Weishaupt, he's acting like a Jesuit. Well, he might actually be a closet Jesuit himself, which factually, that's actually not true. He never was friends with the Jesuits. He, in fact, one of his later books after the order was disbanded, he has not really a whole lot of good things to say about the Jesuit system, educational system in Bavaria.
Yeah, and let's quickly talk about the tie to the Jesuits. The claims that Adam Weishaupt was a Jesuit or tied with him was because he was educated in a Jesuit university, and as we know today in America, there's, I'd say, like 20 or 30 Jesuit-founded colleges where people go to college and they don't even know that a Jesuit had founded it, and they're getting their college education at a Jesuit university, right?
That could be.
Sure.
The thing, first of all, I don't want to come across as an old Jesuit basher here.
Of course, no. I just want the truth, the facts.
Absolutely. In most of the German states, they were actually respected as educators, and even after they were disbanded by a papal bull in 1773, it was one of those things where, yeah, okay, officially you're disbanded, but we'll still keep you on staff. And for example, in Prussia, Frederick the Great's, a large part of the teaching staff in Frederick the Great's public educational system was Jesuit, and he wasn't about to fire all his teachers or a lot of his teachers. In Bavaria, their job had been to keep Lutheranism out of Bavaria.
Bavaria was largely a Catholic state.
Staunchly Catholic. I think probably... Go ahead.
Oh, to this day, right?
To this day.
Okay.
I would say Bavaria is probably about as Catholic as Ireland is, which is very, very Catholic.
Okay.
So in 1549, they were summoned to Bavaria to make sure that Bavaria stayed loyal to Rome. Military action and draconic punishments had failed, so the Duke of Bavaria decided that, well, let's go ahead and use the educational system. And if you want to have a better paying job in Bavaria, you have to go to a Bavarian high school, you have to go to a Bavarian State University. They had been able to keep Bavaria pretty Catholic for 200 years, so now the Age of Enlightenment is upon us in the 18th century. And Bavaria is still kind of stuck in time in the 16th century. Weishaupt he enrolls in a Catholic elementary school, goes to high school, and he basically grows up in the Catholic educational system, which is mostly run by the Jesuits. So that's where the association with the Jesuits is.
Sure.
That if we look at Weishaupt's later writings, the Catholic educational system was very, very standardized, and Weishaupt was one of those guys that he was one of those really sharp kids, very bookish as a kid. And he was so sharp, he had his law degree at the age of 20, and that's a doctorate degree. So he was probably the kind of kid that didn't find the standardized teach-to-the-test type teaching very stimulating. He was a vehement critic of the Jesuit educational system.
So was he just a smart guy that just created his own order, and that became the foundation of the Bavarian Illuminati, just basically wanting to go outside the normal education and look deeper into the secret mysteries of our universe and ancient history and so forth, and he decided, hey, there's more to it here, and I want to start my own kind of school of enlightenment that became the Illuminati.
Yeah, there's actually another part to that story. So in 1773, the Jesuits are disbanded, and Weishaupt's godfather, Baron von Eichstätt, decides that it is time to restructure the faculty. And I want to say about half of the Jesuit faculty gets the axe. And Weishaupt is given the chair of canon law or church law because he was not a Jesuit. And that did not sit well with the Jesuits. They accused Eichstätt of nepotism, and they made Weishaupt's life pretty horrible at that time. So in 1774, he meets one of his students, and his student over time reveals to him that he's a Freemason, and the way that he basically insinuates over time that he's a Freemason. And Weishaupt is thinking, wow, I wish I was part of a secret society like that. You know, we're working on moral improvement, all that stuff. And not only that, we can do it in secret, plus we're protected by powerful people. Weishaupt was just one of those embattled, frazzled young kids that had just come out of college. He's getting his first full-time teaching job, and everyone at his new place is hating on him. And so that's definitely one of his major motivations. As far as looking into the mysteries of the universe, it's one of those things that if he would have grown up in the northern Lutheran states, he would have never had the impulse to start a secret organization. Later, we find out that Weishaupt was pretty much just interested in exploring Enlightenment era philosophy.
So with just like-minded individuals?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Nothing sinister about it? Well, secret.
I weren't totally innocent about some things.
Sure.
One of the things that, if we're talking about their dealings with the Jesuits, they did not like them. and they used their secret influence to, or their private influence to get the former Jesuits thrown out of the university at Ingolstadt. They discredited them wherever they could publicly.
And were they, sorry to interrupt you there, were they actually still Catholic at the time? They just didn't agree with the secret order of the Jesuits?
They, not so much the secret order of the Jesuits, but how they were basically controlling the educational process, and how they were trying to keep anything that didn't match their philosophy, their dogma, out of Bavaria.
Okay, gotcha.
So that was basically the start. That was basically the start. Later, it moves on to greater ambitions. He wanted to incorporate Freemasonry into that, and his first strategy was to have his members join the various lodges and slowly gain the majority in those lodges, and then basically take over Freemasonry through kind of like a hostile takeover policy.
And why would he want to do that? Did he believe that possibly the Jesuits were controlling Freemasonry, and he saw it as a way for his order to control it? Or
Freemasonry to him was primarily a network to get to proliferate his ideas.
Okay.
And also he agreed with a lot of the basic philosophical principles of Freemasonry, which is about becoming a better person and becoming a better man, really. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely one of the things that very much appealed to him. The ritual itself, he felt needed changing, and it also he also felt that he needed to change it to his own purposes. So as far as the Jesuits and Freemasonry is concerned, anything that is conspiratorial about the Illuminati is primarily directed at those two areas.
So the Jesuits that time are disbanded. Adam Weishaupt creates the Illuminati. Then immediately the Jesuits that are still, of course, around, they're making his life kind of a hell. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the members of the order. How can you explain how this antagonistic relationship boiled over, and then what ultimately happened with that relationship?
Weishaupt basically never broke with Catholicism. He broke with he had problems with the dogmatism of the Jesuits.
Okay. So when Catholicism, the Jesuits were kind of disbanded, they still remain Catholic, of course, like they do to this day in Bavaria.
Exactly, mostly.
Okay.
But it wasn't really about changing people to another religion.
I have guests on the show that, they claim that the Illuminati actually was taken over by the Jesuits eventually, and that's what happened to the original Illuminati. Is there any truth to that?
No, we know that the last Illuminati lodge closed around 1792 to 1793. What after that, and it was basically a matter of they were losing members. The Age of Enlightenment was basically transitioning into early modern times. A lot of the things that they sought to accomplish were already getting done, and being a member of the Illuminati meant that you had to give up a lot of your own free time. Basically, there was a lot of research that you had to do as a member across a variety of academic disciplines. You had to do a lot of self-examination. You had to send monthly reports on yourself to your superiors, to the others. They would review them. It was a lot of it was basically a significant sacrifice of one's own free time to be a member in the order.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I know the Rosicrucians, they still operate that way today.
Right. Now, interestingly, the Illuminati, at least as far as Weishaupt was concerned, Rosicrucianism was something that they were actually opposed to. That was one of the other things that they tried to ridicule publicly. Although toward the end of the order, there was kind of a schism because Knigge was not all that opposed to some of the esoteric aspects of Rosicrucianism, the esoteric aspects of Freemasonry. Weishaupt, on the other hand, was very much opposed to that. He had, in his younger years, apparently had some experiences with very abstract speculative philosophy, played around a little bit with alchemy and the Kabbalah, and he found it all very disappointing. He considered it a waste of time and resources.
Why do you think that he had thought that it was maybe misleading material that was put out there based on these systems?
He felt, and he actually writes that in several points in throughout the ritual. In fact, you can see a progression that once the Masonic degrees start in the system, and there's a total of 5 of them, the 3 symbolic degrees and then 2 higher degrees called Scottish degrees, the lectures gradually disparage disciplines like alchemy and astrology, and he's trying to lead them more toward philosophy, but also at the same time trying to avoid atheism. He felt that alchemy and various other doctrines tended to withdraw a person from his responsibilities towards society, and he also felt that those disciplines were promoting vice, avarice, making gold. That was the one thing that he keeps talking about. Hey, look, you can't use these rituals to make gold. And besides, what would you do with that? You're just trying to be greedy and get gold by engaging in alchemy. And he understood, I think, also that these days, by and large, these paths, these traditions are mostly known as initiatory traditions, as traditions that help you develop spiritually as a spiritual person. Weishaupt, on the other hand, felt that that was just one of those things where you want to have your cake and eat it too.
What was his thoughts on the Rosicrucians and that order? And the next question I have for you there is what's the history that you know about them?
They actively worked to discredit the Rosicrucians.
Okay.
In fact, Knigge, who was kind of the star author of the order, and he was an incredibly dedicated person to the order until that big fallout that they had, he practically commissioned Knigge to write a pamphlet called On Jesuits, Freemasons, and Rosicrucians. And basically, he writes that, well, Freemasonry is a good tradition, but it has become corrupted and we need to fix it. And there are just a handful of lodges that have stayed true to the true spirit of Freemasonry. And of course, by that, he means the lodges that are now part of the Illuminati system. And the Jesuits, well, what he writes about the Jesuits is basically your conspiracy theory that we still have on the Jesuits today, that there were a bunch of assassins, political, that they were trying to maneuver politically and so forth. Uses historical fact, but arranges it in such a manner that you don't really see a whole lot of good things about the Jesuits. Rosicrucianism, he felt, was a matter of the deceived deceivers, people that had been defrauded by other people, and now they were kind of continuing the fraud.
That's interesting. I know the Rosicrucians and, of course, the Freemasons play a large role in the founding of America. You know, we have the A-mark the American division of the Rosicrucians as well, and many high-level businessmen were Rosicrucians and as well as Freemasons. I know Walt Disney was a Rosicrucian. They don't say he was actually a Freemason, but he was a member of Jacques de Molay as he had grown up. And again, it's just kind of interesting how history evolves. In your study, have you done any study to the history of the Rosicrucians? Where were they founded and so forth?
I haven't really had. It's a matter of hours and of how many hours.
Of course.
And I also want to reiterate that when I say that this is what they wrote about the Rosicrucians, that's not necessarily my own opinion of them.
Of course, yeah. You're just transcribing and relating what the original order of the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, I always say Weishaupt because I'm American, but as Weishaupt had said about them at that time, and that's what you're relating in this conversation.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. What were the relation between, the Freemasons? We have George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and they're prominent Freemasons, the first president of the United States, and then there's this, this letter that's pretty famous that is circulated here in America and all around the world that is basically an anti-Illuminati letter. Have you found any truth to this letter? And was it an actual letter written by George Washington?
Are you talking about the letter, the correspondence between George Snyder and George Washington?
Correct.
Yeah. Basically, now we're kind of moving into the few years preceding the election of 1800. Of course, you can't have a presidential election without a good conspiracy, right?
Right.
So basically, what had happened was that John Robeson and Abbé Baruel had published their polemic histories of the French Revolution, and especially the terrors of of Robespierre. The copy of Robeson had reached George Snyder, and I think we don't really know exactly where it came from, but we're thinking that he was probably a member of the anti-Masonic party. He was definitely considered to be an anti-Masonic agitator, so he sends George Washington a book, a copy of Robeson's book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. And he says, I just want you to be aware of the fact that there might be Illuminati in the United States. And since you are the Grand Master of all Freemasons in the United States, I am asking you to make sure that the doctrines of the Jacobins don't infiltrate American Freemasonry. Well, first of all, Freemasonry in the United States, we don't have a Grand Master of the whole country. It's divided into jurisdictions that are organized by state. So, and it's always been that way. Washington pretty much smelled a rat right away. And he says something like, yes, I'm aware that the doctrines of the Jacobins have made it to the United States. I haven't really been to Lodge all that much lately. So, but I don't think they're taking over. I don't think that they're taking over American Freemasonry. So then Snyder follows up with another letter about a month later and says, well, have you had a chance to read the book? And Washington at this time really doesn't want to continue the conversation. So he says, no, I haven't read the book, and basically my time is taken up by answering letters from complete strangers. So, and a lot of people get hung up on the fact that there's this passage that he says, I am satisfied that the doctrines of the Jacobins are in the United States, and they get hung up on the phrase, I am satisfied, and they interpret it to say that I'm glad that they're in the United States. But if we're looking at 18th century English, the phrase "I am satisfied" means that,
I am confident,
or I know.
I know. Gotcha.
So that's one of the things that trips up a lot of people who are looking at this material, and that's one of the hazards when you look at primary sources
Hmm.
and you don't have the necessary background information. By the way, that was actually one of the things that I was very grateful for, that Joseph Vegas and Reinhard Markner, who had been studying that material for quite some time, that they were actually on board with this. And so whenever I had a question, I could ask them, and sometimes the questions I asked were probably pretty stupid.
And why does Washington refer to them as the doctrine of the Jacobins? Can you explain who they are and the most
Sure.
that you know? Okay.
The Jacobins were a party in the French Revolution, and in fact, there were actually two factions in the Jacobins, and then Robespierre's faction was the militant faction that did all the beheadings. And the time that Robespierre was in charge of the Jacobins is actually still known as the Reign of Terror, because tens of thousands of people that were suspected of disagreeing with the revolution were just executed.
Without question.
Exactly, or with very, very cursory show trials. Due process is definitely not something that they got.
That year that George Washington allegedly wrote the letter, that was the same year that they were disbanded, though, of the Illuminati in Germany and Bavaria and so forth?
No, let me go ahead and pull up the page here real quick.
Sure, take your time.
I actually have that on my blog somewhere, which I've neglected since I started getting serious since I started getting involved seriously in this project here.
Yeah, there's only so much time in the day, as you had said.
Exactly. Right now, I work about anywhere from like 10 to 12 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to have a life and time with your wife as well.
Exactly. Okay, let's see here. Like I said, it's very. I want to say it's in 1798. It's a shooting off the hip here. It's shortly before the election of 1800, and it's about the same time that that Thomas Jefferson writes his famous letter to the Bishop of Philadelphia,
Hmm.
where he says that he feels that the Baruel sounds like a veritable bedlamite, but Weishaupt sounds like an enthusiastic philanthrope. Yeah, you can pretty much put it in the context of election politics.
Gotcha, that we still have to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
The first letter that Snyder writes him is dated August 22nd, 1798. And then that correspondence continues until Washington basically sends him the final "Don't call me, I'll call you" letter on September 25th of the same year, September 25, 1798.
Interesting. And at that time, the Freemasons in the United States, were they considered Scottish Rite at that time, or was the Scottish Rite not even formed?
The Scottish Rite is actually is a system of higher degrees that the Freemasonry is basically your first three degrees: entered apprentice, master mason, entered apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason.
Call that the Blue Lodge, correct?
Exactly, that's
Okay.
the Blue Lodge. And then you've got other degrees that are kind of added to it, but it's not like they have more authority other than maybe like moral authority, but it's not like a hierarchy that goes up to the 32nd degree. a person that is a Scottish Rite member, I personally would respect as someone who has studied Freemasonry and who is a source of knowledge. But it's not like when we're sitting in lodge that he gets a special seat because he's a 32nd degree, other than as a gesture of respect. It wouldn't be a position of authority, but one of respect.
The Scottish Rite Freemasons, it of course goes up to the 33rd degree. How does someone get a 33rd degree in Scottish Rite Freemasonry? Do you know?
Yes, the 33rd degree is an honorary degree, and there's a national committee that decides, well, this guy has done a lot for Freemasonry. I think we should give him some special recognition, and then they bestow the 33rd degree on him.
Gotcha. And the York Rite Freemasonry would be a separate division as opposed to the Scottish Rite, correct?
Exactly, yes.
And the York would be mainly English Freemasonry?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, great. What are some key interesting things that you could share with us in regards to the transcriptions you had done in your book, or any rituals that really stand out to you?
One of the things that really surprised me is that I think that this book is basically going to restart the whole discussion on the Illuminati, because all the things that I had read about them, either from conspiratorial sites or some of the better historical sites, all of that stuff needs to be reevaluated, because, you can say that they were rationalists, but they weren't atheists. The higher mysteries degrees were meant to steer people away from atheism. They were using the first beginnings of what we would call cognitive theory to by using philosophy, prove that there is a life after death, there is a God, and what we do here will affect us in the afterlife. And the other thing, as far as I was looking for, of course, occult rituals, and those I did not find. In fact, I was actually kind of surprised that in the course of the degree structure, they were trying to kind of like pull the initiate's head out of a cloud and put his feet back on the ground. I found that extremely fascinating. Also, the higher mysteries degrees have no ritual at all. They were just they were philosophical essays, and the way that the degree was conferred to you was they just gave you that essay to read. Then you had to give it back to the person who issued it to you, and share your thoughts with them. And bam! Now you're part of the higher mysteries.
You look back at the rituals, and then what was published, it was basically almost like these words and these sentences and everything that was composed in these rituals was to make the initiate think, and to think differently, and to possibly awaken them to a different way of thinking.
Exactly. The one of the degrees, that probably the most difficult degree, was the Magus degree, also called the Docetus degree. And Doceticism is basically the doctrine. It's an early Christian doctrine, actually, that said that Christ was not an actual person, but that it was because God is infinite, and therefore God cannot be part of a finite universe, but that it was more kind of like an image that either was projected into the minds of the initiates, or that it was kind of like a hologram type thing, to use a contemporary term. but that Christ did not have a physical body. The awareness that you get from reading the degree is very, very counterintuitive. That was kind of my first reaction because, and now that I've had some time to think about it, because he uses left brain thinking, logical, rational thought, and basically just a piece of written paper to do what in other traditions is done through ritual.
So it's almost like he's using, the magic of words to do what he needs to do without physically being there.
Exactly. Yes. So there's no dramatic ritual story. There is no drums or whatever, anything to put you in another state of mind. It's just the thoughts, and it's a logical argument almost that he uses to kind of create that awareness. And I thought that was extremely fascinating. Yeah, definitely.
Sure, and I know you've been through your own rituals yourself with, of course, being a Freemason and the O.T.O. How would you compare the ancient rituals of the original Illuminati that you were one of the first to transcribe to English with those of the Freemasons and the O.T.O. today?
I want to say, as far as the O.T.O. rituals are concerned, they're not even close. They're not even close. The O.T.O. rituals is as far as I can talk about them, because I've made commitments not to. But basically, O.T.O. rituals are what you call a dramatic ritual, which means that you become kind of an actor in kind of a spiritual play, and you there's kind of an awareness that ties in well to things like Rosicrucianism, alchemy, astrology, all those things. The Illuminati rituals want to take you in a different direction. The one thing that struck me about them is that they are very, very tame. And I'm not saying that the O.T.O. rituals are wild and crazy and, all the other stuff that you hear from
the conspiracy arena.
Exactly, yeah. But they are very, very tame. The Masonic degrees of the Illuminati have a lot of similarities to what's practiced in Masonry today, although there are some major differences, and that's why we can publish them. But yes, you can recognize them as that having been a Masonic tradition at some point in time. In fact, they were adapted from the dominant ritual, the dominant Masonic rite at the time, which was the strict observance.
What degree Freemason are you today?
I'm a Master Mason, and at this time, I think I'm going to stay in the Blue Lodge for a while, because I think it's every time you move on to another step, you have to be ready for that step, and I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet.
Sure, and you have to put in the work and the rituals and so forth, and you don't want to commit to anything when you have time constraints.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And yeah, in the O.T.O. I'm second degree, which is pretty low on the totem pole.
Yeah. And these days, we still hear the famous Illuminati conspiracy still being strongly perpetuated out there, and the conspiracy and truth movement even. I've had several people on here talk about the Illuminati, and everybody always has a different take on them. And then, of course, you have the Freemasons, which will somehow be tied into it as well. Is there any truth that the Freemasons today, the Scottish Rite, could be compared to the Illuminati, and that's why it's being perpetuated, or is this just some loosely tied thing together throughout time in a conspiracy?
Well, I can't really go into details about the Scottish Rite since I'm not a member of the Scottish Rite.
Sure.
But I mean, looking at a lot of the things that I hear from the conspiracy community, I've become extremely skeptical toward anything that's being said in that community. I remember one time there was there was a discussion on how a major German manufacturer was secretly implanting RFID chips into the clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I took like 2 or 3 days off work to look into that. No, they weren't doing that secretly. They were just doing it for inventory purposes. At the point of sale, those chips are taken out, because when you take them, if you don't take them out, sometimes when you go back into the store, they reactivate.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're wearing the clothes that you bought at Jerry Weber, which was the retailer, if you're wearing the clothes into that store and then you're trying to leave the store again, the alarm system goes off.
Gotcha.
So, and in fact, they weren't even keeping that secret. They got a major industry award from that. So it wasn't a secret. So that was the...
And that eventually turned into what every clothing manufacturer, Walmart, uses today, and they tie to their clothes, and they got to take out at the register for you to walk out the store.
So, and that was kind of like the turning point where I stopped being even a tiny little bit on the fence. So something is always rotten in the state of Denmark. Some people are always conspiring for something, but is it a grand, big master conspiracy? I have to see more evidence for that.
Sure. What's your thoughts about a researcher, philosopher such as yourself, that's interested in these things and enlightenment? It sounds like you're interested in truth, even though, you write about various things that have become huge conspiracies. You're actually not focused on the conspiracy, but the actual history and the truth, it's refreshing to definitely hear that, Jeva. What are your thoughts and advice to people out there that are always getting drawn into this, including myself? I've been in this for, 7 years now, and I go back and forth on the Illuminati, Freemasons, and so forth. What are your advice to people out there not to get caught in the web of conspiracy and lies?
Well, as far as the Illuminati is concerned, their beginning and their end are very well documented. My goodness, the amount of bona fide source material that's out there is absolutely overwhelming. So it's not that there's nothing out there. There's so much out there that there's actually a research group in Erfurt, Germany, that are in the process of digitizing all these documents and I'm putting them online. And I can actually send you the link here real quick.
That'd be great.
Here it is. The link that I sent you is a list of all the known members of the Illuminati.
Okay, gotcha.
That we know. And basically, their problem is manpower. They don't have enough people to scan all these documents, upload them to the server, transcribe them, because if you look at some of the links that they have there, or some of the documents that have survived are handwritten. And then let me send you this link right over here. Actually, I found that I was looking for something completely different, and I came across this library archive in Estonia, out of all places. And let's see here. We've got a sample of Weishaupt's handwriting right over here. So some of that is very, very hard to read, even if you know how to read that script, because Weishaupt's handwriting was incredibly bad.
So it seems like this conspiracy, you have people, basically all day long blogging and writing about it. You have them on YouTube. Some of these channels, they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they're literally just perpetuating lies and conspiracies to make money. Mm-hmm.
I would also say look for scholarly sources, academic sources. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the conspiracy people, and I've got a lot of friends who are conspiracy theorists. I respect their personal beliefs. I respect the fact that they have personal beliefs, and on my own Facebook page, unless I'm in a mood, I try not to say anything that's going to offend them, because they're on my friends list because, sure, they're good people and I like them. And, I've got other places where I can vent about that stuff.
Yeah, and Jeva, do you believe that we're all on our own individual paths at finding truths, and even though you might not agree with someone, hey, that's their path, let them think and do what they want.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we're living in the States, because everyone has the right to figure everything out for themselves. My only concern is that, and I also understand that I grew up in a culture where, we're afraid of guns,
Mm-hmm.
and personal gun ownership, that's pretty out there. But I've come to understand that, hey, look, this is the United States. It's a gun culture. Everyone likes their guns. Fine. We've got the Second Amendment, and I'm not opposed to it. But my concern is that when you surround yourself with a lot of information that's really, really scary, that appeals to our existential fears, the loss of life and property and all those things, and you combine that with guns, that's a very dangerous combination.
It is. So your thoughts are that some of these people that might be having, weapons, deadly weapons, that could be your neighbor or friends even, that
Mm-hmm.
are basing their information and their lives and their truths on conspiracies and possibly lies because they're not actually looking into some of these conspiracies and looking for the truth. That creates a somewhat dangerous recipe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for example, it's like until Dylan Roof shut up the church, people had their own opinions on the Confederate flag. There were people who loved it, people who hated it, but basically it was still flying in all these places, right? Well, there's one guy that ruins it for everyone. All of a sudden, it's a very, very polarizing discussion, even more so than it was before. And he did that out of reasons that were completely irrational.
I know we live in a society, as you had mentioned, we have the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, and then also the First Amendment, which is the right to pretty much almost say what you will within reason, as long as it's not a terroristic threat, threatening someone's life. We almost could say whatever we want here in America. Is that a double-edged sword, meaning that the people that aren't educated and they're ignorant and they're spreading this disinformation, is it hurting things more than it's helping, do you feel?
It's a double-edged sword.
It is, yeah.
It is. But I think we also have the responsibility to look at good sources.
Sure. To use reason and logic.
Exactly, yes. I think the interview that you posted with the Jonestown survivor, it really struck a chord in me because I think she was talking about how he started out as this very inspiring type person, and then over time he basically turned something that could have become very wonderful into something that ended up being very ugly and deadly.
Correct.
And so we have to make sure that before we do things or say things that we can't take back, that we're absolutely 100% certain about it, and that we have good information to on which to base our actions.
One of my problems sometimes is speaking my mind without sitting on it for a minute and thinking and using reason. And I know a lot of us in America do that, and it's actually hurting us and hurting our relationships more than it's helping them. So, I like that you gave that advice on that. And what's next for Jeva? What do you plan to do? Are you going to be doing more translations? Is this growing into a possibly lifelong project, or are you going to move on to something else?
Well, translation is basically what I do for a living. There will be other things. I can't go into the specifics because usually when I work on a project, it's subject to a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay.
Because it's my livelihood.
Before we wrap up the show today, Jeva, can you tell the audience where is the best place they can find more of your great work?
It's definitely Amazon is a good place to go. That's where you can get The Secret School of Wisdom, the authentic rituals and doctrines of the Illuminati. And my other book, which is the translation of Knigge's Philo's reply to questions concerning his association with the Illuminati, you can get that there as well.
Great. And if there's anybody out there that is looking for a great transcriptionist. Is your specialty German to English only, or do you do other languages? Okay, yeah. German to English. So to get a hold of you, if someone out there, you never know, listen to this podcast, they would do the same. They go to that website, hit the contact form.
Yeah, or you can actually email me at my business email, which would be info@firstchoicewriting.com. And it's first choice is spelled out, so the word instead of the number.
Great. And Jeva, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you today. It's refreshing, to talk to someone about the Illuminati, and it's based on actually historical facts, on truth. And you're someone out there that doesn't want to, keep perpetuating the conspiracy that everybody's making money off of today, and it's actually based on historical facts. So again, thank you for coming on the Gnostic Warrior and dispelling some of those myths and those conspiracies.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
All right. Take care, buddy.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.